glad to see everybody here today and spending their precious weekday evening here. And what more, because we have a very special speaker for today in conjunction with our great ladies at work event. But before we proceed with the main agenda for today, may I present our founder and chairman, Wan Muhammad Firdaus, to actually explain to you what Young Corporate Malaysia is actually about. Please welcome.
Hi, good evening everyone. Thank you, Ain. Thank you everyone for coming today, and thank you also to Natasha for making time. I know that Natasha is always very busy. I think later all of you will hear that Natasha is one of the smartest young lady CEOs that we have in the country. So hopefully we can learn a lot from her today. Young Corporate Malaysia basically is a business club for young professionals. We would like to congregate young professionals between the age of 21 to 30 in events like this. We do these events every month. As a matter of fact, now, because we are more organized and we have slightly more money than before, so we do 2 events every month now. So, and we alternate them between male and female CEOs. So today we have for Natasha. In 2 weeks' time, on the 19th of April, we'll be hosting the Google CEO, Mr. Sajid. Yes. So as you know, Google just opened their Asia office in Cyberjaya. So we'll be hosting the CEO on the 19th of April. So we are looking forward for more young people to help us in YCM. So later on, if you are interested to be a convener or a committee member like Ain and Aiman, or even from Hana and Chen Chow. So please do come and approach them and tell them that you are interested to be a committee member. Thank you very much.
Actually, before we start, I'd like to make this session quite informal. So I see that the seats in front is actually empty. Can we just like some people move in front? So that we can be a bit closer. Alright. Oh, before I move on, maybe I should introduce a bit about myself. I'm actually Kuratul Ain. I'm a convener with Young Corporate Malaysia. And it's really heartwarming to see Young Corporate Malaysia as it is what it is now. It's a small group of people when we were in London, but now it's expanded. So I'm really happy to see everybody here. I'm working in Bank Malaysia and I'm attached currently to the Islamic Banking and Takaful department. Now, enough about me. Well, today we have a very special lady. She's the managing partner of Ethos Co. And I'm sure everybody probably would have seen her CV, and I think it's very impressive by far. She's achieved first class in economics from Cambridge. And I'm sure, as you all know, consulting companies always take the best people, and they always get the blue chip human capital. So, you know, McKinsey, Goldman Sachs, I mean, really, who are they? We have our own well-grown, homebred ethos and our own consultancy firm, so we should be proud of it, of the achievements that it has achieved. And she's going to tell you how women is important in corporate Malaysia today. And her title is Political Economy of Malaysia, amongst others. Please welcome Ms. Natasha Kamaluddin.
So how do we get this to work? This clearly shows that there's a technology gap between
Hello.
There isn't. Okay, thank you. Firstly, thank you very much, Firdaus, for inviting me to be here, and thank you, Farhana, for actually making it happen. They invited me actually a couple of months ago, and I must say I was a bit rude. I think I didn't, reply to the email simply because, for that month, the month of January, I think it was only one night that I managed to sleep before 1 o'clock in the morning. So now my schedule is more manageable, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm very fascinated by the fact that even though it's me presenting, we have more men than women. But essentially, this is the deal. This is the deal. The deal is, you indulge me. I only have about 14, 15 slides max, and you indulge me by letting me talk about a topic which I'm very passionate about, which is the political economy of Malaysia. In return, you get to ask me anything, and the people of Ethos who are here will tell you, will testify to the fact that you'll be hard-pressed to find someone who is as open as me. So you can ask me anything from how to get married, or rather how to get a guy to propose to you within 6 weeks, how to lose 20 kgs in 6 months, which I just did by the way, how to actually, you know, manage a teenage girl and a baby at the same time. But you can ask me anything, and yeah, I'll be telling you my journey. And I think my journey is a very relevant journey because later you will see some data about how essentially we are really seriously lacking in terms of women participation in corporate Malaysia. And now when you see, no offense to the guys, but you know, fact-based, you know, we see more women graduates and more of them at the higher, at the first class, second class level, yeah? So we have to have a system in place that retains these people in the workforce as long as possible. So that's going to be the deal tonight. So let's start. Oh, I'm supposed to press. What happened? Oh, Hakim is pressing. Okay, thank you, Hakim.
You got a man to press you.
Yes, thank you. Right, thanks. Okay, all of us in this room, I think, are too young to know about the NEP, the new economic policy. At best, you may have heard about it from your grandparents, from your parents, but as professionals, as consultants, we have come across data. You probably also have come across data, to describe the situation at that point in time, whereby in 1970, 60% of the population was poor. 65% of corporate equity in Malaysia at that point in time was actually in the hand of foreigners, and only 2% in the hand of women. So, we started off 1970 in that kind of situation, and the government intentionally then set a growth strategy, which was essentially growth with social equity, or growth with distribution is what they call it. And for a long time, up to 2000, some would claim that that was largely successful during that period. As you can see, growth was close to 10%, was certainly averaging at about 8, so between 5 to 10%. But after 2000, our growth prospects essentially considerably weakened, and we'll talk about a bit why that has happened. We've had 2 serious recessions in the past 15 years or so, and the cost of actually recovering the economy from those recessions have been very high. Next. Okay. So we had the Asian financial crisis. We then had another recession about 2-3 years ago, and we had stimulus packages to actually lift Malaysia out of the recession, and we're very proud of being amongst the countries in this region that were the fastest in recovery, but we forget the cost is very, very high. So if you look on my right-hand side in terms of federal government debt, it essentially has been growing at a rate of compounded annual growth rate of more than 12%. And this is essentially looking at you see those figures in bubbles. That's basically federal government debt as a percentage of GDP. Meaning to say, if you take GDP as the income of the country, and you compare government debt against GDP, we are now at 74% level. That's if you take national income as the denominator. But I would argue that you can't compare if you want to compare national income, you need to compare national income with national debt. If you look at government debt, you should be looking at it against government income. Government income is essentially tax revenue, which is only, 26% of that, essentially. So our federal government debt levels are very, very high. So, beside the fact that we have our growth prospects have considerably weakened, government debt levels are very high, I think there are underlying issues to be concerned about. The first chart that you see there on the left-hand side, essentially saying that we are still very much a resource-based economy. Our 2 key commodities, oil and gas plantations, account for about 1/3 of the national economy still. So we're still, quite resource-based. This is even excluding timber and so on, other resources. And given the fact that, our wealth is coming from these resources, we have essentially happily been spending it on consumerism, because if you see in my middle chart, investment, because the opposite of investment is consumption is actually investment. Investment as a share of GDP and private investment as a share of GDP is actually very low and has been declining. So we have all these resources which should actually make us rich, but instead of investing it, which I'm sure you will agree is the right thing to do, we have actually been spending it. And as a result of that, productivity growth in Malaysia has been significantly less than other countries in this region. So there are fundamentals that are actually very concerning. Next slide. So because we have poor productivity growth, essentially we can't support this move towards a high income nation that we've been trying to achieve. Yeah? So if you look at national mean household income, it has essentially been stagnating. It was maybe 3,300 before, now it's about 27 years later, it's about 3,600. That's in terms of nominal terms. So for the bottom 40% and middle 40%, income growth has basically stagnated. The income growth that has been happening has actually been concentrated at the top 20%. Because essentially talent in Malaysia is so scarce that if you fall to this pool, essentially you just can continue to move jobs and command a premium for your skills because there's such scarcity of talent. And every time I show this data, it's not here, people don't believe me, but if you look at EPF data, essentially it will show that between 90 to 95% of wage earners, total EPF members, actually earn 5,000 or less. So if anybody in this room, well, I'm sure quite a lot of you actually earn 5,000 or more, well, then you're in the top 5–10%. Makes you feel better, doesn't it?
Per annum or per month?
Per month, darling. Per annum, obviously, you're in Ringgit, Malaysia, per month. This, by the way, is household income, meaning to say that if you have husband and wife and both are working, it's actually joint income. That makes it even more scary. Okay, so the economy is in deep shape. So the real question is, how on earth did we start off with so many natural resources and end up in such deep shape? So the situation that we face today, you can either say it's despite, or I would say it's actually because of execution failures in the growth model that we pursued. So this kind of history of the sort of growth strategies that Malaysia has pursued. So in the sorry, I don't like competition. So in the 1970s, as I mentioned, we were largely a commodity-based economy. And not just we were a commodity-based economy, a lot of those assets were actually still owned by the colonial masters. Yeah, a lot of them were still British-owned. So Farhana here was in PNB, and I'm sure she knows the whole history of PNB. So she will know that during that point in time, PNB actually made a concerted effort to pool the funds of this country and actually acquire Guthrie, Sandabi, Harrison's and Crossfield and make this essentially Malaysian-owned. Yeah? Now, in probably during the later part of that decade, in the early 1980s, we decided, we wanted to be serious in terms of diversifying the economy, and as part of that strategy, we would create our own firms, but we would also bring foreign firms to Malaysia. And so, we incentivize foreign companies to actually set up operations here, which is the top part, FDI and export-led growth, as well as establishment of large Malaysian conglomerates. Now, the key thing to happen here is that for us to understand what sort of MNC type operations were being located in Malaysia at that point in time. Now, to put this in context, I think at that point in time there wasn't much competition. If you were looking for a base in Southeast Asia, you wanted market proximity, you wanted cheap labor costs, you wanted political stability. We kind of didn't have much competition. Yeah? And in the 1980s, we accounted for 28% of FDI into Southeast Asia. Today, it has declined to 11%. But even then, the sort of activities, if you look at the value chain of a company, I'm sure most of you are getting familiar with this value chain concept, I think you can simplify the value chain of most industries into essentially the sort of R&D and design phase of a product or service. Then there is the you know, component or ingredient manufacturing. You could get an intermediate assembly, and then essentially final assembly, and then distribution, and then retail. Yeah.